Nathaniel's escape capsule bobbed rhythmically in the azure waters of the vast global ocean, coming to rest atop a flotation ring after its violent atmospheric re-entry. Steam hissed angrily from the top of the elongated seed-shaped capsule as the nose peeled away like segments of fruit to reveal the occupant within. Nathaniel, who was most recently the mechanic of the FSS Duplicity Vice, climbed slowly from the capsule. His clothes drenched from fluid that had moments ago filled the interior of the capsule to buffer the effects of re-entry. He immediately vomited, the same fluid having filled his lungs, directly oxygenating his blood during the stress of his escape. He rested for a moment at the top of the capsule, his arms slung heavy over the edge of the opening. He gathered himself after the rough landing, his mind still rattled from the cataclysmic destruction of his starship home by unseen forces. As he rubbed his eyes, however, the reality of the vista before finally dawned. Water. Nothing but an endless carpet of lazuli water as far as he could see, in every direction out to a wide open horizon framed only by a clear cerulean sky. Nathaniel was originally from Fall's Edge, having been born and raised among the thousands of spaceborne habitats and junkyards in the Trojan asteroid clusters in the orbit of the gas giant planet of Arcturus. Space was vast, endless in its expansiveness, but somehow this felt bigger, more tangible in its enormity. He was overcome with momentary pangs of agoraphobia as his mind sought to orient itself in this new world. He had no idea where he landed, the escape capsule activating its AG manifold to whisk its occupant away to the nearest settled star system and to safety. Nathaniel breathed the air. He seemed safe enough from the lack of instantaneous death, and he climbed out of the castle and onto the rubbery flotation ring that maintained its buoyancy in the water. He peered down into the clear, vibrant ocean waters, noticing a relatively shallow, sandy seafloor, probably less than 30 feet beneath him. But it was what was between him and the seafloor that stunned him. It was life. The water teemed with all manner of creatures, from squid-like analog schools to hard-shelled mollusks swimming through the vast kelp fills and coral outcroppings. He had never seen so much life in his 23 years, his home defined by the artificial environs of habitats and spacecraft. This was not a farm or an enclosure at some zoo. This was nature, wild and free, in all its unhindered glory. He was broken from his reverie, however, by the sound of a scraping rubber. He turned to witness the tentacle-like appendages of the squid analog creatures probing the surface of his capsule's flotation ring, their barbed and spiny prongs scratching the inflated rubber composite. Nathaniel jumped into action, maneuvering himself to the creatures and retrieving a pair of Vero blades from his belt. The dagger-like multi-purpose blades were crafted from a metallic alloy that emitted a highly accelerated vibration, further enhancing their lethality. As the threat of potential puncture and capsizing hung over him, Nathaniel frantically stabbed and sliced at the encroaching tentacles, inflicting serious wounds from which a thick, dark green viscous fluid poured into the water around his capsule, sending the local biome into a feeding frenzy. Better them than me, Nathaniel thought as he continued to swipe and slash at any further encroachment from the tentacle creatures. He gathered his survival kit that was stowed in the pod and removed his personal emergency survival flare, a projectile device with a combination of strobing lights, hyper-colored fluorescent smoke, and a wide-spectrum electronic distress beacon. Revealing one's position was also fraught with risks, as you never knew exactly how civilized the population was on a world in the diaspora. But with only a couple of days of rations and the challenges of navigating a vast ocean, survival was dependent on rescue, and he knew full well that he was all alone. The crew of the FSS Duplicity Vice, surely all lost. It was over 16 hours later, as the early morning light of the planet star kissed the horizon, when he saw it. Cresting over the edge of the world was what appeared to be an island, his first sighting of land since splashdown. Yet this was no island. It was moving. Slowly, over the next several hours, the island seemed to float towards him until the details became apparent. Structures, Windmills, cranes, and even sails adorned the surface of the floating island, while the whole of the structure gave off a rough metallic glint in the growing sunlight of the day as it approached. When it finally reached Nathaniel, the whole of the island dwarfed the capsule, an imposing construct of metal floating on an endless sea. Nathaniel looked up with awe at the island as faces appeared over the edge, some 30 feet above him. A mix of inquisitive expressions, young and old, peered over the edge and down at Nathaniel, seeking to gander at the strange spaceman seemingly lost at sea. The gathered crowd parted for a moment as a crane boom swung overhead, lowering a hook, which Nathaniel attached to the top of his capsule. Riding it up out of the water, Nathaniel watched as the inquisitive squid-like creatures clung to the edge of the flotation ring for a moment before falling back into the waters below. As the capsule cleared the edge of the island, Nathaniel could see that it housed hundreds of people, if not thousands, in a floating town. As it finally reached the deck, Nathaniel took his first step on the island before collapsing to the ground in a rough-seated position as a man approached. He was a jovial-looking man, middle-aged, wiry, fair skin, and red of face and hair. He wandered over and patted Nathaniel on the back as the starship mechanic remained seated, the exhaustion of his interstellar and aquatic ordeals finally getting the best of him. Nathaniel looked up at the man's smiling face. "You're not from around here, are you, son?" The man chuckled at the obviousness of his own statement. "Welcome to Ozovin.